I'm Alan Gerding, and this is Mothershow, the show that's all about Mothership, the sci-fi horror role-playing game by Sean McCoy. Today I want to talk about A Pound of Flesh. Pound of Flesh is one of our adventure modules, although I don't like using the term module. A module usually is, once you're done with it, it doesn't really have much use. You know, what I like to call these are adventure toolkits, because even when you're done using whatever adventures may specifically lie within, there's still so many tools that can be used to continually create adventures well into the future. For instance, in Pound of Flesh, not only do you have stories, there's charts for establishments, there's cybernetic mutations, whole bunch of different charts in here that you can use. And that's true with all of the adventure toolkits. For instance, if we go to the first one that was released, Dead Planet, what you find inside there is not only this amazing adventure of being stranded on some dark moon colony, but you can make your own derelict ship just by rolling a whole bunch of D6s and putting them together. It's pretty incredible stuff. You get a lot of mileage out of each of these. A Pound of Flesh is what I've used the most. What is a pound of flesh? As I like to describe it, the Tortuga of space. Tortuga was the pirate capital where all these pirates would come and join and get in a whole bunch of mischief without fear of the law breathing down their neck. Well, that is Prospero's dream, the main location described in A Pound of Flesh. It's a space station run by a criminal syndicate. Basically, the rules are, don't do something that's going to get you killed. The other highlights are cybernetic implants that you can get your arm chopped off. You can Luke Skywalker that hand. There's sleeves. If you want a new body, you can just upload your consciousness into that body. Lots of money to be made. Drugs, prostitution, a lot of rated R stuff. Welcome to Prospero's dream. So right away when you open this, another thing that I love about A Pound of Flesh in each of these adventure toolkits is they're designed from the ground up to be really easy for the warden to use. So what does that even look like? Well, right away, on the first page, if you open it, you're gonna find that you have an entire map of Prospero's dream. It's even sectioned off into areas of how long it would take you to traverse from each area to the next. But this also works as the table of contents. So for instance, if all of a sudden my players end up at the Tempest company, it tells me to turn to page 28. So I turn to page 28 and boom, there's a Tempest company. In my opinion, there's basically 3 different approaches to how you run a game session as a dungeon master, or as we call them in Mothership, a warden. One is totally loosey-goosey on this end of the spectrum. You didn't plan jack crap, and you're pretty much improvising whatever you can, and maybe you have some random roll charts that you can just roll on to see what happens, improvising throughout this whole thing, having no idea where it's gonna go. On the opposite end of that spectrum, something that's entirely structured, has every little interaction scripted out to a T. Therefore, a lot of times the warden, the dungeon master, is just going to be reading straight from the book exactly what someone is saying. And on this continuum, there's a whole bunch of spots that you can stop in between, but right in the middle is the third type of approach, which is just a blended mix of the two, that Venn diagram overlap. And I think Pound of Flesh, if I were to rank it on this continuum of total improv to everything so thoroughly structured that it's almost an adventure on rails, it's definitely solidly right in the middle. I have done all 3 of these different ways to play with my Mothership group. I myself, inspired by A Pound of Flesh, have put a little adventure on wheels, a little adventure on rails, that has a definite start and an end. I had exact lines that I was reading to my players. I wrote out thorough descriptions beforehand, so I had this Google Doc that I was just going through as they were playing. Then I also had nothing planned for one adventure and thought, let's just see how well this works. I kind of stress tested A Pound of Flesh on this continuum to see how well it would work if I truly had nothing prepared, only having glossed through the book in advance. But most of my adventures, I think, fall where Pound of Flesh really shines, and that's right in between. A little bit of prep beforehand, getting familiar with each of the areas you think that your players are going to explore, making sure that I understand where the charts are and the story that those charts can evoke, but also leaving a lot of room for change. Realistically, what a Pound of Flesh gives you, it gives you a living world, a hub where your adventurers can come and go as they please. Because maybe they show up to Prospero's dream just to resupply and reduce their stress, or maybe to get a cybernetic enhancement, so they can just come and go as they please. But every time the adventurers visit, there's different things going on. And that is even explained very simply using a table on page 7 near the beginning, where it tells you 3 main storylines and how the storylines change potentially after each visit that the players engage in. So how did I use this? Well, one of my favorite parts of A Pound of Flesh are the main characters, the main players. In my opinion, movies and role-playing games are only as intriguing as the characters. Now, an environment can be a character of itself. It could just be such a creepy atmosphere that itself is a source of character.
Okay, so the scariest environment imaginable. Thanks. That's all you gotta say. Scariest environment imaginable.
But in Prospero's dream, there's basically 4 main factions that are described, and there's characters involved in each of those 4 factions. Maybe there's a 5th faction that I can talk about, but some of the main players are in more than one of those factions. So what are these 4 factions, the main sources of power at Prospero's dream, found within A Pound of Flesh? Faction 1, Mafia. They're called the Novos, also known as Yandi's people, because Yandi is the current leader of the Mafia that runs Prospero's dream. This is basically the powerhouse, the government, for lack of a better term, that runs this space station.
Listen now, Mr. Kansas Law Dog. Law don't go around here.
Because a space station is run by criminals, you can imagine that there's probably a lot of ebb and flow of power, just like there would be in any type of mob. Someone's killed Michael Corleone. Who's gonna be the next Godfather? Well, who's gonna be the next Yandi? If Yandi's taken out, then who's gonna take control of this very profitable space station? Faction number 2, the Tempest Mercenary Company. The Tempest Mercenary Company are hired to do the muscle work for a lot of the Mafia, the Novos, Yandi's people. Why? Because maybe there's not enough Mafia members, and you want to make sure that you have everyone in line. Plus, you can trust people's greed.
Greed is good.
Faction number 3 is the Solarian Church. This is a group of monks that live there, and they grow a drug. So think of it as this monastery of people walking around that worship the sun, hence Solarian. And they make a drug, Psychorax, and they sell it. It's a highly addictive drug, but it's also used to help people transition into their new cybernetic installments. So if you want a mechanical arm or some type of awesome eyeball, you can go ahead and get operated on at the chop shop, but you may need a drug to help you accept this new technology, and Psychorax is the key. So think of these monks that make drugs, and there you have your 3rd faction. The 4th faction is the Teamsters Local 32819L. Now these are the individuals, the workers that the Solarian Church have hired to go ahead and help distribute and market the Psychorax drug ring they have going on. So those are the 4 factions. If there was a 5th faction, it would be the individuals from Dop Town. Dop Town stands for Deprived Oxygen People. So maybe think of the movie Total Recall, once the oxygen was turned off in that Mars space station and everyone was being deprived of breath.
Come on, Cohagen, you got what you want. Give these people air.
That's basically the constant living condition of Dop Town, where a whole bunch of people live. And why do they live down there? Because they can't afford their oxygen tax, or maybe their docking fee when they came in. Basically, it's a debtor's prison. If you're in debt, you gotta go down to Dop Town, and that's where you're gonna live until you work in indentured servitude to pay off your debts. So that's possibly a 5th faction. The common people, if you will, the downtrodden, the lower class. And they're at the base of this space station. Everything good's up around the top ring, but then you got the core stem, and down below, People are gasping for air. Those are the 4, maybe 5 factions. Now for me, traditionally my players have had difficulty keeping track of who's who and what does what. So I simplified it a little bit for them. I combined the Teamsters local and the Tempest Company mercenaries.
Fusion! Ha!
Basically, all of the muscle that's on this space station, the equivalent of the police force, if you will, are the mercenaries. And the mercenaries are Teamsters. They're Teamsters that are hired. They have a union. So if you were to hire some outside muscle, they'd have a problem with that because union strong. If you want a job done on Prospero's Dream, you better be going to the Tempest Co. local mercenary union. Here's the beautiful thing about Prospero's Dream, a pound of flesh. Your players don't need to know any of the stuff that I'm already telling you. In fact, getting into the details of my players' experience, I didn't tell them any of the stuff I just told you about the 4 factions. They were in some type of altercation where they ended up stealing someone else's spaceship. And they wanted to get the hell out of there, and there was a destination already programmed into that ship's navigation computer. So when they just hightailed it out of there because they were under attack and they punched it, the predetermined destination was Prospero's Dream. They had no idea where they were. So when their ship started approaching Prospero's Dream, of course they were hailed by the dockmaster, Loshe. And that's one of the main characters. And in my games, I use Loshe as the go-to person. They befriended Loshe naturally. He was the first person they interacted with. So Loshe greets them over communications as they're approaching. I gave Loshe a little bit of a southern draw. I was kind of going for a Matthew McConaughey thing. Because Loshe is this 4-armed dude. He's got 2 cybernetic arms. He's constantly drinking Cadre Cola, one of those culturally recurring products that I kept on using in each little adventure. So after Prospero's Dream, when my party went to somewhere else, Cadre Cola is still really popular.
I drink Cadre Cola. It's the spot.
Anyways, Loshe greets them. Welcome to Prospero's Dreams. My records say that you've already been here. I hope you all have a great time. You know the usual docking fee, but it seems that your docking fee has already been paid for the day. If you're unfamiliar with Prospero's Dream, don't forget we got all these fine locations at your disposal. And I used Loshe right then and there to kind of give them an introduction to what was going on. I just grabbed this adventurer's toolkit as Loshe and said, welcome to Prospero's Dream. You're going to be landing in the dry dock, Station 01. The docking fee is 1 kill credit, which has already been paid for you, and 100 credits per day. There's also an oxygen tax, which is 10 credits a day per person. Stellar Burn is in Section 02 of the Prospero's Dream. If you're looking to get yourself some cybernetic enhancements, I highly recommend you go to the Chop Shop in Section 03. And Section 04 is the Icebox. This is where you can get slickware installed. Think of the Matrix when you think of slickware, where you can instantly install a language or some type of martial arts. I know Kung Fu. I know Kung Fu. Section 05 is the Farm. The Farm is where you can get all your food needs met, including some of your psycho racks from the Solarian Church. Then you got Section 6, it's a canon heavy dot market. If you like playing your virtual reality games or like living in that type of space, you can go there. We got a whole bunch of teams, but it requires a membership and or invitation, so don't think you'll be going there unless you're already expected to be there. If you can't pay your fees, then you'll find yourself in Section 07, the court. This is where people get sentenced to live in Dop Town, the oxygen-deprived people, or where you fight to the death for everyone's entertainment to help pay off your dues.
2 men enter, 1 man leaves.
So make sure you pay up because you don't want to end up a resident of Dop Town, an indentured servant, and you also don't want to find yourself at the wrong end of a very vicious opponent for everyone else's entertainment. So, my advice to any of you newcomers is pay your fees. Don't forget, you got Section 08, the Tempest Company headquarters. That's the closest thing we have to law enforcement here. If you need a job done, make sure you hire Tempest Company mercenaries. If you're looking for work, they're always hiring, but you got to do work in order to become a Tempest Company member. Finally, we got Dop Town, which is down below. I shouldn't tell you this, but a lot of times people around here call them hung lungs. It's a derogatory term, so don't go around calling anyone hung lungs unnecessarily. Kind of an insult around here. And that's Prospero's dream. May the Prospero's dream make all of your dreams prosper. So my players land at Prospero's dream, and right away they have something to do. Who paid for our docking fee? Now, why did I do this? Because I didn't want them landing in Prospero's dream thinking, uh-oh, we don't have any money, what's gonna go on? Because they didn't have any money, first of all. And I think even if they did, I didn't want them to automatically feel, oh crap.
I'm broke as shit. I have a judgment against me from some bitch down there in Florida.
Instead, what I wrote into the adventure was they wanted to know why the hell this was already paid. And sure enough, my players asked Loshe, like, yeah, just out of curiosity, who paid for our docking fee? Well, according to my records here, it says Gender Giles is your man. Your proprietor, Gender Giles, he left a message to meet him at the Stellar Burn. He'll be there every evening. So even if players weren't really sure what they could do, and inevitably you're gonna have some of those players that are kind of cashed out, or even in between sessions, you may want to keep players engaged in what they can do in the next adventure. I just made sure they had access to pretty much everything they could possibly purchase at Prospero's Dream. That included food and drinks at the Stellar Burn, prostitution, drugs from the Solarian Church. It even included all of the cybernetic implants and the slickware. So they had something to keep them interested about, wow, this is a good place to visit. There's a lot of things we can do here. Then I introduced some of the story because right away they wanted to go to the Stellar Burn to meet this mysterious investor, for lack of a better term. Like, why? What is this? On their way to the Stellar Burn, that is when I introduced one of the main 3 evolving storylines that you'll find in A Pound of Flesh. So from this point on, this is pretty heavy plot spoiler. So if you're watching this right now and you want to experience A Pound of Flesh as if you never heard anything about it beyond this introduction, I would stop watching now. Because here's where I'm going to tell you very specific details of what my players did, which will give away some of the storylines. So I'm talking to the Wardens now. Right away, on their way from the dry dock, there are high-vis hollow screens all over the place. Just think of any cyberpunk movie you've seen, because this is a huge space station, it's a crowded city, there's all these pop-up shops, neon all over the place. Somehow it's wet and drippy too, because maybe they're not spending enough money on taking care of things. Very populated, they see people with all sorts of cybernetic enhancements, a cornucopia, a whole menagerie of seedy characters. The type of environment that gets you excited while simultaneously causing you to hold on to your purse strings. It's so much to look at, so much to do, but at the same time, you know, people are looking at you like you're fresh meat. Try not to look like a tourist. But while I'm describing this to the players, I have the high-vis announce, Reedmar's freighter fleet has been captured by the Stratmeyer Syndicate. He demands Yandy send in the Tempest Company to rescue them. Will Yandy send in the Tempest Company to rescue them? Or will this standoff continue? And that little news blurb just pops up. So by doing this high-vis holographic screen that just does these news blurbs, sure enough, someone was writing down, wait, what was that? And I just repeated again. Reedmar's freighter fleet has been captured by the Stratmeyer Syndicate. He demands Yandy send in Tempest Company to rescue them. Tension. You should have some questions. Reedmar's freighter fleet has been captured? Like, who's Reedmar? What's this freighter fleet? Like, what is that about? And who's Yandy? And who are the Stratmeyer Syndicate? So the players now have questions, a little bit of mystery going on in the background. Like, what's going on? And the cool thing is, they don't have to pay attention to it. They don't. But if they do, it adds that much more engagement, because later on, this story is going to escalate and escalate, and it's going to totally play in to exactly what is happening to the players. So my players arrive at the Stellar Burn, where they meet Gender Giles, this individual that is more robot than human at this point, having so many cybernetic enhancements, having a hard time breathing. I'm not talking like Darth Vader, I'm talking worse than Darth Vader. We're talking worse than General Grievous. Like, think of General Grievous, Star Wars, but has almost like an accordion that's using a walking iron lung is basically Gender Giles. But Gender Giles tells the players, you are not the individuals I originally hired. Where are they? So right away, my players realize, oh crap. Is the jig up? Like, who is this guy? Do we tell him the truth? attention.
20 minutes later.
So I hope this gives you an idea of how you can use a pound of flesh. There's so much more that I didn't even cover because my players didn't cover. They didn't have time in the court because they were paying off their debts, and I didn't even touch the third plot line, not just the Tempest Company union strike, not just the Hung Lung terrorism rebellion, but I didn't even mention the third storyline where all those cybernetic enhancements have a virus that's spreading and corrupting everybody, turning them into basically cybernetic mutant zombies. But that's later on if they come back to Prospero stream. So hoping my players haven't watched that. In fact, I should retroactively say, hey, if you're one of my players, don't watch this part of the video. But I already said it, so that's kind of that. All right, hey, hopefully you enjoyed my little take on a pound of flesh. Speaking of pound, don't forget to pound the subscribe button. Leave your comments, questions, whatever below. And hey, I'm Alan Gerding, and this is TKtv.